GFCI outlet install. Now as far as tools or lights or whatever, this is just a regular headlamp that I wrapped around my neck because putting it on my head gives me a headache. And it's just easy to see what you're doing while you have the power off. So you can see over there above the dishwasher, I got my lamp plugged in, and with your lamp plugged in, as you flip switches, you can just step back in and see if you got the right switch. So as I'm still going through here, flipping switches, trying to find that one, I've been looking at the 15 amps, and it's not either one of them. So we're gonna have to go to the 20 amps and see if it's on that circuit. So right now I'm looking at the GFCI outlet that I'm replacing is on a 20 amp fuse, but you do not need a 20 amp GFCI outlet. You can use a 15 amp GFCI outlet on a 20 amp fuse. So I just want to clarify from this side of things, from this fuse panel, the one that I'm working on is a 20 amp fuse for the fuse breaker or the circuit breaker for the fuse panel, and it's going to be a 15 amp that I put in, so that doesn't have to be matched up. It just means at 15 amps it's going to kick off, but it does not have to be a 20 amp GFCI on a 20 amp circuit panel or fuse panel. Alright, so I took the receptacles out. We put the hot and neutral, or the black and the white wire, into the receptacle, plugged in a lamp. Since we're getting power, we know that this part is true. Determine if the power is flowing to the receptacle by plugging in a lamp or radio. If so, the capped wires are the load wires. Cap wires are the load wires. So when we go to install the GFCI, we know where each wire goes. So obviously the next thing would be to go back and turn the power off, and then we can install the GFCI outlet. Bathroom, if you haven't already done so, get the GFCI tester. That's a good ground. Good ground. Okay, so here's some different outlets you may run across. This thing is ancient. So here's another one that's old as well, compared to a more updated version one. These little tiny holes right here, it says that you can put some pressure on these and it'll release the tension on the wires so you can pull them out. Good luck with that. Some of these old ones, that doesn't really work, so you end up cutting them anyway, but maybe you'll get lucky with that. You're left with this mess right here. So if you're lucky, you get one that's not complicated like this, which is basically one cable. So when you come across a one cable deal, it's actually a lot simpler. So there's just the line, there is no load, it's just the line, and that's all you got to hook up. There you go. That's what that looks like. So in other words, you'll hook your black or your hot into the hot side, and your white or your neutral into the white side, and that's it. Aside from the ground, you can always put that on, but you don't have to worry about any other lines for the load. One cable, 2 to 3 wires. So you don't even have to figure it out. It's already labeled. Load, it's up here, line is down here. So that's an easy install right there. So if you got delicate hands or you're having trouble straightening out these wires, just take a pair of pliers, crimp down on it, and it'll help straighten it right out. So you get in close and personal and you can see the 2 cables. So that's the tricky part, is when you get ready to operate, you want to make sure that the cables that you pull out and keep together are the ones from the same wire. And I just want to call your attention to step 6, identifying cables and wire. The second bullet here, if you see one cable, 2 to 3 wires, it is the line cable. There you go. That's what that looks like. One cable, 2 to 3 wires. You're going to take these and you're just going to slide them down in here after you've loosened this. Slide them down in there. If they're too long, sticking up, cut them off down here. Needle nose pliers are great for that kind of thing. That's what you do with each wire. The other thing I'll cover quickly is that you may find yourself twisting this box, twisting these wires. Once you have them in there very tight, that's okay. You also may find, you want to check, make sure that this ground, this hole right here, is facing this way. It doesn't matter, but usually people want them facing like that. So what's interesting about this after we get done is that we hit the reset button. It comes on saying that it's grounded correctly, and then it kicks off, indicating that there's too much electricity or there's an overload on the circuit. So this one's really jacked up. This one has 3 wires coming in instead of 2. So that's going to be real fun. So as you go to troubleshoot this, just make sure when you take it back apart, you attach the proper labels to the proper wires for each wire. Okay, so what we learned by this debacle here, 1, 2, 3 lines coming in. So, determine if power is flowing to the receptacle. If so, the capped wires are the load lines. If not, the capped wires are the line wires. So I went ahead and labeled them because I get easily confused. And fortunately for these receptacles, they have 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we'll be able to put these extra lines in the line slot designated, and then the load wires in the forbidden load slots. Okay, so like I was saying earlier, we have 3 wires instead of 2 wires. So you're going to take the extra line wires. There's a slot for these 2 and a slot for these 2. And they're both labeled. One's hot, which is black, one's white, which is neutral. And then our load lines will go up there under the tape. We'll peel that off and stick that in. So a good recommendation is to use some electrical tape and wrap it around the edge, covering up the contact. Is it needed? Is it mandatory? No. It's just nice for the next person that comes along and tries to work on it. And if any wires are exposed in here and rub up against one of these contacts, it'll save you some heartache. So as we were troubleshooting this earlier about these wires, I went through the process of seeing if these wires, if it mattered which slot they went in on this side, or if it was a different brand, if that was a problem, or even a different amperage. But what it turned out to be is I was incorrect in diagnosing which was line and which was load. So take some time with that, and it may save you some heartache in the long run. Another tip for when you're wrapping your electrical tape, be careful about covering up the screws as you wrap it around. You have to keep an eye on that. If you do end up wrapping a screw, just back it out. That might be easier than just cutting it all the tape up, and then you can go from there. So first thing you want to do is you want to separate out, make sure that you get the black and the white wire coming out of the right cable. So right now they're kind of a mishmash, so we're going to get them separated. Alright, so now we got them separated. So out of this one cable, you can see here, you got the black and the white, the hot and the neutral together. Same thing for the other side. Like I said earlier, what they've done for the ground wire is they've crimped it in the back. You can kind of see it there, so that you don't have, otherwise you would have another wire hanging out. But anyway, that doesn't matter, they got it crimped. You do need to make sure that these are correct as far as separating them out from each cable. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take an outlet and plug these up to determine which one is line and which one is load. Okay, so on this outlet here, you can see in the back we got the 2 cables coming in. So this is the one where we'll have to do the test. And let's edit that in just a second. But I wanted to make a comment about this piece right here. Because of this type of tile, there's this thickness to it in the sheetrock. So you'll have to have this, or somebody will have to have this installed. And if you do have it installed, when you come across your receptacle replacement, make sure that you got it back on there, because you might decide you want to pull it off and work on it and put it together, and then be like, oh yeah, it's got to be on there before you put the receptacle on there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take a newer outlet, and we're going to plug the black in to one of these holes where it says hot, and the white into one of these holes which is neutral. And we'll do this one at a time between both cables, and I'll show you what that looks like in a second. Okay, identifying cables, wires. So if you see one cable, 2, 3 wires, it's a line cable. But obviously in this scenario we have 2 cables giving us 5 wires. They have their 2 grounds crimped back there in the back. So then we'll have to run a little test to see which one is load and which one is line. So you got your first set of wires attached in as instructed, and it's on the back to indicate which way they go in. And then your other set of wires from your other cable are capped. So we get a lamp plugged in, because that one shares the same circuit as this one. Okay, so what we do is label it. So that's the after. This is the before. Turn the power off. So you stick it in, you got no light. And at that point, when the power is off, that's when you go to another outlet. You plug it in, no light. So that means that that one and that one are on the same circuit. So you just label it as such. You don't have to worry about replacing it. So we'll just replace that one with a GFCI. Alright, here's the GFCI protected outlet label. Comes in the box that you put on outlets, other outlets on the same circuit. So that's a nice feature, because you don't have to replace the outlet with a GFCI outlet. You just label it as being protected because they're on the same circuit. And the way you learn if they're on the same circuit is use the lamp method that we did earlier. When you shut the power off, you go around with that lamp, plugging it into the different outlets to find out which ones are on the same circuit. So there's a little issue here between the gauge size of the wire and the size of where you're supposed to go in. So this is wider or larger than this hole is. So we're gonna have to attach it directly to there. All right, so we got our white wire attached to our silver, or also called neutral, then the black attached to the copper, or the gold, it may be called. Doing it this way, since it's just temporary, to hook up and find out which one's line, which one's load. So sometimes when you use the screws that come with the receptacles, they don't always go back in real well to the original outlet. So take a toothpick, shove it in there, break it off a few times, and screw it in. If that doesn't work, then you're just gonna have to take this screw and replace it with a longer one. But that's a simple fix. Okay, back to our lamp. The lamp did not come on, so we go over to our instructions. So we go to call out C, determine if power is flowing to the receptacle. If so, the capped wires are the load lines. If not, the capped wires are the line wires. So that means these are the line wires and these 2 are the load wires. So when you get your GFCI receptacle, right there it says line, you know which wires go in there. And this one says load, so you know which wires go in there based on the results of your test. So in this case, these are going to be our line wires. So they're going to go in the line slots. Your hot and your white, or your black and your neutral. And these are going to be our load wires. to go into the load slot marked on your GFCI. So what do you need to do before you start working? Go turn the power back off. So white to silver. Remember, this is the load line that we're working on. It'll also say white wire on the back. So just read the instructions and you'll get it. So back there you can see it says hot. Right there. So this is going to be your white or your neutral, and your hot or your black. You see how far out that exposed wire is sticking? That's one you'll want to cut. And when I say cut, I mean cut to fit. You know, take your, those pliers on the wire cutter part, and you're just going to shorten that wire to make it fit in there flush. And now you've got a better fit with less exposed wire. If you find that you got not enough exposed wire, then you're going to take your strippers, find out what size gauge, stick it in there, cut it, wiggle it, pull it off. So in this case, these wires are 12. Go to your fuse panel and turn the power back on. Alright, so remember when you go to turn the fuse breaker back on, these guys are set at the factory to be tripped. Okay, so you're going to come back in and see that it's not working or it's not hooked up right or whatever. All you need to do is hit the reset button and it gets our lamp on and everything's all set and everything's all cool. Now since this box, this blue box, fits so snugly on here, I'm not going to tape it with electrical tape. It is absolutely a tight, snug fit. So it's up to you, but it is. I'm not going to do it in this case. You can see how tight it is. So you see the distance to get to that back there from the front of this right here. This screw that came with it will not work. You have to improvise.